I'm super excited to announce this next panel. It is using technology to meet corporate ESG goals. And to moderate this panel, we have the one and only David Levy, CMO of OrbitMI. We're very excited about this panel. We have a great, diverse set of companies and speakers, so excited to hear what they all have to say.
Is this on? It is on.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. As everyone comes in here, why don't you guys all come up here as they're walking up? I can start things off. My name is David Levy. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of OrbitMI. We are a software as a services and data as a services company based in New York. We were created out of a spin-off from Stena Bulk in 2019. We have two product lines, as I mentioned, software as a service and data as a service. Our data as a service includes AIS and vessel and company particulars, weather data, as well as proprietary routing algorithm and API that we sell. And our software platform, which is called Orbit, has been operational since 2017, is an, I call it an operating system of sorts for Maritime, with solutions from noon reporting to operations chartering, technical services management. We recently introduced a new solution called Orbit Weather Plus, which is about weather routing. So we're very excited about that. Last night, I was at dinner with Peter at a great restaurant, by the way. It's called Course, C-O-A-R-S-E. It's down in the Meatpacking District. If anyone's looking for a place to go, it's a chef's choice tasting menu, and you just eat what he cooks. But he also pairs every dish with the wine. So after about 6 or 7 courses and at least as many glasses of wine, I turned to Peter and I said, I don't know if we're going to have enough content for today. Just became a little panicked. And Peter assured me that, with a topic as broad as using technology to meet corporate ESG goals, and with 4 distinguished members of the panel, that we'll surely be able to fill up the time. But we hope to do more than just fill up the time. Hopefully there's some insights and things that you might learn here. So let me introduce the panel, because what we're going to do is we're going to talk about technology in the context of ESG, both from the technology provider's point of view and from the ship owners and ship managers' point of view. So let me start with, here's Peter Björkborg from Stena Bulk. He's a manager of sustainability and transformation there, and Peter's been involved in and instrumental in the creation of Orbit, but also kind of touches everything from an ESG related at Stena Bulk. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, and all the way on my left, your right, is Matthias Ritters from Thome Ship Management. He's the managing director out of Hamburg. Also run their tanker division, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Tanker division in Singapore, and it's my pleasure to be with you here on the stage, David.
And Thome manages 220 vessels, and also from a crew management perspective, an additional 150. So it's a pretty large company. Now, in the middle, we have 2 gentlemen who I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves, because they have very unique technologies. And so let me turn it over to them. You can spend a little time talking about your company and what your value proposition is. So first, on the second from the right here is Osher Perry. Osher, talk a little bit about your company.
Thank you, David, and it's great to be here this afternoon with all of you. Osher Perry, I'm the founder and CEO of ShipIn Systems. We're a Boston-based software company that delivers a fleet management solution that is based on computer vision. We are, I would say, in the panel here representing the S and the G of the ESG. There's a lot of talk about the environmental aspect, obviously, given the times. But what ShipIn does is actually we're looking at the social and the governance. I'll explain how we do it very briefly. So we all recognize that ships are getting bigger, and the crew number is reducing, and the challenges and the tasks that the crew has on board is increasing. What we do is provide a platform that connects, what we believe for the first time in the industry, the owners, the managers, and the crew on the same platform, literally seeing the same information at the same time, and we focus on safety, maintenance, cargo operations activities. We were recently awarded the Technology Company of the Year, and also had Munich Re, which is the largest reinsurance to the industry, join as a stakeholder in the company. We have offices, as I mentioned, in Boston, and recently expanding now to Singapore, Hamburg, we have office in Tel Aviv as well. That's a little bit about us. So again, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Osher. And next to Osher is Christiaan Nijst, CEO and co-founder of Value Maritime. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Value?
Yes, thank you for the introduction, David. So Value Maritime was founded 5 years ago, and we offer our customers a technology that can improve the environmental footprint of the vessel today, but also has a financial business case behind it. So we clean the exhaust gas from seagoing vessels, particularly in Europe, container feeders, where we clean the exhaust gas from sulfur, we clean the water that comes out of it, and we reduce CO2. And we do that today. So we're a company that developed this technology based on land-based technology and translated it into a product that has a business case to earn back its investment within 2 years, but also improves the CO2 footprint up to 40%. And I'm very happy to announce that together with Eastern Pacific Shipping, by the end of the year, we will outfit an MR tanker with 40% CO2 capture capability, being the first vessel out there that can reduce that amount of CO2 from the exhaust of that vessel. So very excited to be here and very excited to talk about the technologies that are out there to make an impact today, not in 10, 20 years, but today.
That's great. Thank you, gentlemen. Let me kick this off with our question about ESG. And Peter, why don't you start, and then Matthias, if you can comment on it, and then we can open it up. ESG are very different types of issues for ship owners and ship managers. And one hypothesis is that the decarbonization aspect of the E is driving a lot of the innovation here, because at the end of the day, it's all about capturing data, and all of the technologies ultimately use data. So talk a little bit about how decarbonization may be a driver of the E and the S and the G, and talk a little bit about how you see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's quite clear that technology is going to be key to solve all the kind of challenges that we have ahead of us, both when it comes to the E and the S and the G, but especially the E, I think, right now, because that's what most of us are focusing on at least. I think more interestingly, we're also seeing an increased awareness that it's not only the, let's say, traditional ship technology that we're talking about. It's not only about engines and fuels and hulls and propellers, but also new technology, as we've just heard a couple of examples of. And even more so, I think, also digital technology, which is very exciting for me, because I've been working with digital technology in shipping for a number of years, and in general, it hasn't really been, let's say, hyper speed in the adoption. So in that sense, I think decarbonization could actually be an enabler for some of those technologies to take off as well. So in one sense, yes, technology will drive decarbonization, but decarbonization can also drive technology adoption. And I think that adoption of technology can also open up other doors. So I think that what we're going through now with the E, and by doing that also becoming more data-driven, more maybe not tech-savvy, but at least tech-oriented, more efficient, more agile, more transparent. I think all of those things are going to help us face the challenges that come next, be it in the S and the G or in other areas as well. So yes, I definitely think that what we're going through now in decarbonization, we can learn a lot from as well, and we can prepare for upcoming challenges as well.
Matthias, what's your take on this? How did the ES and the G kind of dance together, so to speak?
Yeah, they are perfectly dancing together. And you were mentioning that, the decarbonization is driving data-driven industry. Shipping has always been a data-driven industry. What we are, of course, seeing now is that vessels are, connected now. So we have the Internet of Things, we have sensors which are affordable. So this is, of course, providing us with a lot of data which can be analyzed, and this is, of course, supporting the adoption of new technologies. We are talking about hardware. That's why technology is a relatively broad term, but it's not only the hardware, it's also the software. It's solutions which we can find by analyzing data, capturing the data, and this translates and enables us to find improvements in all the three elements in the environment. This has been discussed at length during this Marine Money Conference, decarbonization, energy efficiency, waste reduction and everything, but also on the social side. This is where, of course, I think we are looking into becoming a better industry for our people, so health and safety. There's a lot which can be improved by better data, by digitalization. The same applies to learning and development. And even on the governance side, of course, we need to be responsible businesses. That's an important part of the governance structure. And also there, I mean, screening of suppliers. Sanctions are a big topic now. But also in the EU, we are talking about a new supply chain law, which is being discussed. So also here, digital solutions will help to implement and comply with these requirements. So that's why all the three elements are supported by digital data-driven technology. Shipping 4.0.
4.0, I like that. I wanted to pick up on something, Osher, that you had said as we move on. Different technologies may have different utility in terms of how they impact environmental, social, or governance. Orbit, for instance, is quite strong on the E and the G part, I'd say. So what emerges is there's no single technology that can address all of these, that there's more of a, what we call a portfolio of technologies that might be needed. And such an approach might stimulate different kinds of collaborations in the industry, a lot of which we've spoken about today. Christiaan, I want you to talk a little bit about this idea of a portfolio and where Value Maritime fits into that, and how you see collaboration playing out. And then Osher, you can pick up on that topic as well.
Okay, thanks. How I see it personally is, first of all, we need to have a level playing field. So making sure that data is collectively analyzed and everybody has the same conclusions on what is an improvement or what is not. In the previous session, they talked about well-to-wake analysis, for instance. I think that is key. How I see for Value Maritime, we're just a piece of the puzzle. I think we are. There's no existing silver bullet. The maritime industry uses 5 million barrels per day equivalent of energy. There's no single solution out there. And I think by combining different technologies, by evaluating different technologies, but also by collaborations with partners in the supply chain, partners, customers that are willing to take the risk of a new technology, which is can be scary, but we need to do this to make an impact on the industry, and many initiatives that we've seen over the last 2 years are actually the example where we need to go. And carbon capture, personally, I believe, is one of those. For the short term, for existing vessels, for retrofits, for the bit longer term. If you think about methanol or other synthetic fuels, it goes hand in hand with carbon capture, because you can be running a vessel effectively on hydrogen when you reuse the CO2 from a engine that is propelled by methanol. So many building blocks, many pieces of the puzzle that needs to come together with the different ship owners, suppliers, and of course if I want to make the handover to my neighbor, we need to analyze the complete value chain correctly to make sure we make the right decisions.
Thank you. I think the two questions that you ask are related, right? So I completely agree with what was said here about the calling. Essentially, it's a regulatory pressure for fuel efficiency, for decarbonization, but it brings the reality of, okay, we need more accountability, we need more visibility into what is happening on our assets, on the vessels, and in general in the industry. And that is opening a whole other, more than a window, it's an entire wall that says, okay, we are now looking at implementing solutions, different solutions to improve the operations and adopting maybe tools that have been used in manufacturing, in other forms of transportation, in construction, etc., and bringing them into the industry. So while there's regulatory pressure on the fuel efficiency and decarbonization, you know, when we come to the ship owners, you start looking at, okay, you're able to reduce losses on board the vessel by over 40%. You're able to increase the productivity of your cargo operations by nearly 10%, right? So all of this adds value. Now, when you talk about the integration, then, you know, so our primary tool where we have the patents is on the computer vision applications, and then the communication of video, of visual information from the ship to the shore, right? And that is what we see as previously unavailable data. Almost like in 2007 when the AIS became mandatory, and now there's so many data points, so many value points that you can actually extract from it. We're now bringing in a unique way, new form of data to the shore. And we integrate it. It's not enough that you have a piece of video that was analyzed by the computer vision, but rather you need to have the holistic kind of, what is the story? What was the weather around the vessel? Where was it located? What were the actions on board? And then we are now in collaboration with multiple, so ERP providers, other fleet management solutions, class as well, on you plug in, so maintenance activities are done, you receive the PMS, you know, what needs to be done, you have visual confirmation of the events. You have security aspects that are geofenced, so there are a lot of different applications on what is happening on the vessel that, as I mentioned, that is where the industry is going, we believe, and that's where we encourage those collaborations and the partnerships.
Matthias, why don't you comment on this idea of portfolio of technology, since there are so many different kinds that are just even up on this panel.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Christiaan. I mean, it's a big puzzle, and we need to put the puzzle pieces together. We have the various value chains. We look at our operations, which we need to digitalize. We look at decarbonization. There we have different solutions, and at this stage we should not rule out any solution. So carbon capture, for example, is not fit for every purpose, but it will be fit for certain purposes. And same applies for smart maintenance, for health and safety improvements, smart vessel technology, remote capabilities, which we are having. So what we need to do, we need to bring this all together. But it is important to have a sort of an innovation roadmap, because we need to be clear about where do we add value, where do we improve vessel performance, where do we actually achieve improvements. And this is, of course, what needs to be done. So when we are looking at our way of working, at our systems, at our backbone ERP, at the production systems, we, of course, actively are looking at solutions which can enhance our, let's say, tools we are having now, and then see how can we enhance this with new technology, whether it's hardware or software. But I think it's important to have the clear strategy to see where do we need to end up, and to have a clear innovation roadmap.
Thank you for that. I want to pose this one to Peter, but what Matthias just said, this idea of an innovation roadmap, there's an implication of time, obviously, in that. And Christiaan had mentioned earlier the idea that the time is now, right? There's real pressure on the industry to make change now. But the fact of the matter is there's certain time to value that changes depending on the technology. Orbit is a software as a solution, so there's no installation. Value Maritime is a custom-built system. There's some installations that are involved with ShipIn. So Peter, from this idea of both a portfolio and time to value, how do you look at adopting technologies, or your advice in adopting technologies, knowing that certain types of them may be faster to prove out their value?
Well, and I think we need to be able to be both visionary and think long term, but also pragmatic and see what we can do here and now. I think it's very easy to look at and have a conversation around which technologies are going to take us to 2050 and to net zero, which is great. We should do that. We should talk about zero emission ships. We should talk about zero emission fuel and the wind propulsion and all of that. But we also must realize, I think, that there are more low-hanging fruits that we also need to look at. I think digital technology is one example where I think we can do a lot. A lot of technology is already ready. We know that carbon capture actually works. We know that there are low carbon fuels that we can start using. So we kind of need to be able to keep both those two perspectives, I think, at the same time. And I think the most interesting area is actually technologies that potentially can check both boxes, right? So things that are available for us to adopt now and that can improve over time. And again, I mean, if we can capture 40% carbon now, maybe we can capture 100% in a couple of years or decades. Low carbon fuels might not be perfect today, but if we take methanol as an example again, by blending in green molecules over time, we can actually both start here and now and reach our long-term targets. So those technologies that can be a bit of both, I think, is especially interesting. And by the way, I love your example there of combining methanol and carbon capture. One thing that I would like to explore is if we can combine carbon capture with renewable methanol and see if we can become net negative down the road. So let's talk about that.
You know, on my first, let's say, wish list is to be the supplier of CO2 for the green methanol plant. So that is, to me, that is a truly circular solution. So that's absolutely one of the, you know, capturing CO2 is one, but reusing it instead of putting it under the ground is, I think, the aim we should work for. I mean, on the short term, we in Northern Europe, we luckily have good customers that are willing to pay for the CO2 because they use it in greenhouses. But on the longer term, when these synthetic fuels come live and become a viable technology, then we are at their doors knocking to please provide our CO2. Because, you know, having that circular solution in mind, I think that is something we should strive.
There are business plans being written as we speak right now. Osher, I wanted to get you to comment on this idea of time to value, because there's, and as it relates to maybe some of the discussions around collaboration, because there's certain things that you can do if you work with other companies that can accelerate your adoption with certain clients, or sometimes you find another company that is doing something that you can't do, and you say, hey, let's see if we can combine forces, which accelerates both of your time to value that you can then take to a ship owner or ship operator and say, look, together we've created something that actually can move a lot faster.
Well, in theory, the answer is absolutely yes, right? There's a combination of two things. I think what Christiaan just said, right? When things are ready now. Now, when you talk about technology companies, it's very important to say, okay, what is working now? And when you have, you know, you look around, you look to the right, you look to the left, and you know that there are a lot of technology companies that are starting to develop solutions. Not all of them are in that preparedness kind of stage where they can just, you know, deploy, right? And in that sense, having as when you build a technology company, a software company, or even hardware takes even a lot longer, it's about what is the right time in which you can do those integrations. I think, you know, we've built the company in 2019, the platform became commercial in the beginning of the year, and now we are at a stage where we're expanding the commercial team and ready for those collaborations. Before that, it was a waste of time of everybody, right? So, and when it comes to us, how we look at the time to value, right? We're a combination. We need the sensors on board to get the data, but we're a software company. So we have built partnerships on the supply chain side that allow us to, within signing on an agreement, we deploy equipment to vessels within hours, And we have manuals that are tailored for the vessels, but it's actually done within days, right? So within a very short amount of time, you can turn the lights on the vessel and start receiving data that you previously did not have. That has been a key focus of what we've done as a technology company to focus on what is available, what can you do today, what is the value you can bring to the customers, to the owners today.
Thank you. I wanted to conclude the last few minutes to talk about something that we as technology providers are definitely sure of, which is that our solution can provide a return on investment today or within 2 years or 3 years. But sometimes those promises and those value propositions come up against the commercial realities inside a ship owner, ship manager. And so I wanted to ask Matthias and Peter to talk through how you measure return, which in some cases may be purely return on investment, but there are also other ways to measure return that may or may not be measured from a financial standpoint. We've talked a couple of these. I don't want to give it up because we had some really good discussions here, but Matthias, talk a little bit about how you look at evaluating return and the commercial realities of adopting technologies.
I mean, being at a marine money conference, I don't need to talk about return on investment. There's so many specialists here who know how to do the cost-benefit analysis and to see is the bottom line at the end of the day meeting the requirements. But some of the technologies, of course, will have benefits which are difficult to quantify, whether it's return on reputation, return on safety, return on training and learning and development. But these are things which, of course, also will improve our industry. Whether we look at predictive safety analytics, you cannot maybe directly say that's the saving I'm having, but at the end of the day, you will see an improved number of 0 incidents, 0 injuries, and this at the end pays also off better reputation and also insurance claims which are basically going to 0. But I think what is important is that we have an open mindset in our industry. Looking at the panel, you can directly judge who are the new tech guys and who are the ship manager, traditional ship owner guys, because we are wearing the ties and you're not. And I think that's a little bit of the reflection we need. We need to, I think, look beyond the horizon. We need to also be starting to experiment. So we also need to see, okay, can we work in a different way? Can we adopt new technologies? Sometimes we will fail, but if we don't test, if we don't try, we will not, manage to succeed and to achieve the challenging goals we are having. So that's, I think, what we need to do. We need to explore what can be done, whether it's machine learning technology as well, automation in all the processes. We are, for example, also starting to look into additive manufacturing, something when we now look at the problems we have in the supply chains, getting spare parts all over the place, I think is now a very relevant topic as well. So I think an open mindset, and that's important.
Well, I took off my tie deliberately before the panel, but I couldn't account for my hairstyle, which is definitely a little bit older. So Peter, talk to us a little bit about the commercial realities of adopting technologies.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There are different ways to measure return. One way is the far most popular in boardrooms, I think. So that's, I mean, where we always comes back, right? But we can think long term as well as short term. I mean, we try to be innovative and try new technology because we believe there is a long-term value in it, right? So it comes down to value in the end. Of course, I think we can all agree on this panel, I think, at least, that technology is not really the problem here, right? We have most of the technology we need to decarbonize already. The problem is making it commercially viable. And that is a challenge. It's about incentives. I think there's a number of things that we can do. We have obviously finance represented in this room. That's one key component. Regulations is definitely one key component to push for incentives. And then another thing which is, I think, great about this forum is collaboration and partnerships, right? Because we need to find ways to share risk and share costs, but also in the end share benefits, as someone mentioned yesterday in another panel. So that is really going to be key, I think, moving forward. So let's build relationships, and I think that was the closing remark, David.
Well, that's great, and it turns out that you were correct last night at dinner. We're at the end of our time, and I don't think we had any problem with providing great content and some insights here, so I want to thank everyone here on the panel for joining us.
Thank you.